This episode is sponsored by Dashlane. When studying the past metas of a game, the thing you'll end up asking yourself the most is, what were the devs thinking? Sometimes this can be because they nerfed your favorite builds, sometimes it's because they added a newer, more overpowered class to the game, and sometimes the changes they make to the overworld make you question whether the devs even bothered to playtest the update before it went live. And that is what players were wondering when the devs rolled out patch 1.1.5, the Carboniferous update. This update was a serious game changer for literally every player, because of the two main changes this update introduced. The first is that it introduced abilities that allowed vertebrates to join terrestrial servers. Up until this point, arthropods had total control of the land, but all of this changed once the devs gave vertebrates access to the amniote skill tree. The most important thing this let them unlock was the eggshell ability, which allowed them to move their spawn points onto land. It was looking like the meta was going to be rapidly evolving, becoming more balanced and diverse, so as you can imagine, it was a pretty hyped time for the community. However, this hype was quickly overshadowed by the glaring lack of balance across all of the terrestrial servers due to the second change the devs made. What they did was bump up the spawn rates of plants. Why they did this, no one knows. But it's my personal theory that the devs were just worried that there wouldn't be enough loot for all of the emerging terrestrial factions. Anyways, this was obviously a massive oversight on their part. Some players thought it was a glitch, some assumed it was just incompetence, but the end result was the same. Increasing the plant spawn rate also increases the oxygen level of the overworld. And guess which builds have the stats that scale the best with atmospheric oxygen? Arthropods, of course. And so even though the devs were trying to shift the balance of power away from the arthropods by buffing their new competition, what ended up happening was that arthropods became far more powerful than the new terrestrial vertebrates could ever challenge. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So the HP stat of an arthropod scales directly with the atmospheric oxygen level. This is why in the meta of present day, all terrestrial arthropods are stuck in the lower weight classes. With an oxygen level of only around 20%, they're better off sinking their evolution points into other stats and abilities. During the Carboniferous meta, the oxygen level was around 35%, meaning that with only a few points spent on HP, arthropods could have a ridiculous amount of HP and still have plenty of points to put into other skills like venom, armor, and even the coveted flight ability. Let's take a look at some of the more notorious examples of overstated arthropods. All of these are S tier pretty much just by default, since the only competition they had was from other arthropods. Let's start with Arthropleura. This is a defense tank build with armor that could put a modern-day turtle or armadillo player to shame. The armor could defend against the fangs of giant spiders and the bite of ancient amphibian jaws. As impressive as this is, it's worth noting that this was even more OP at the time due to a lack of intelligence builds, which are the main counter to defense builds, of course. Arthropleura was a herbivore, which meant its only real weakness was, for the most part, irrelevant. The PvP builds of this meta had no such issues. While there's no shortage of terrifying aerial insect builds in present day, none would stand a chance against the eagle-sized speed demons known as griffin flies. They had the same unmatched aerial mobility that modern-day dragonfly mains do, but without the glaring lack of defense and power. Because of this, these players had a completely unchallenged dominance over the aerial domain, and were a nightmare for the struggling new reptile and amphibian players that were trying to break into the terrestrial meta. Yoink! By now, I'm sure you're wondering, how long did the devs let such an imbalanced meta go on? Well, relatively speaking, not that long. Compared to how they let dinosaurs reign for nearly 200 million years, the 60 million year reign of the arthropods wasn't that absurd. Still awful considering that this was a glitch that they should have saw coming, but oh well. After 60 million years of one of the least diverse metas of all time, the devs dropped patch 1.1.6 called the Great Rainforest Collapse, and by extension made the giant arthropods unviable. This allowed other terrestrial vertebrates to finally gain a foothold in the meta, and eventually led to reptilian builds dominating. Arthropods wouldn't become top tier again until insects unlocked the eusocial ability, which didn't happen until 3 expansions down the line in the middle of the Jurassic. But just think what the meta would look like today if the Carboniferous arthropods were still playable. If the griffin fly was still playable today, it would annihilate its competition. Its present-day counterpart, while highly mobile and definitely viable, is still quite vulnerable to the mobility-based bird builds like the kestrel and finch in its adult form, and to fish in its nymph form. The griffin fly, with its higher HP, would at least be able to battle these predators, and possibly even overpower them. Personally, I think they'd be extremely powerful, and potentially work as a counter to the current top-tier dogs and cats, being easily able to score eliminations on them if they got caught out of position. If Arthropleura was still a playable class today, it would still be extremely viable in jungle servers, although the presence of intelligence builds like monkeys might be problematic for it. It also would likely struggle to remember all of the passwords for its numerous social media accounts. Unfortunately, it's tough to survive in the current metagame without high-level intelligence stats, especially when it comes to remembering large amounts of information, like the insanely high number of passwords required to keep yourself secure. But fear not, you can use Dashlane to generate, store, and automatically input passwords so that you can have the best of both worlds. You won't have to remember any more passwords, but you can also keep your accounts extremely secure. My favorite feature of Dashlane is how it autofills every online login form on every website, as well as autofilling payments for online checkouts. Not only is Dashlane secure, but it makes my online life easier all the time. Believe me, as someone who's forgotten passwords more than my fair share of times, it's saved me countless headaches. You can try Dashlane for free by using the link in the description, and you'll be supporting my content in doing so. And by using the code YouTube2018, no spaces, you can even get 10% off the premium membership. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.